No problem.
But I can see everything that is on the screen.
Okay.
So
fine.
just restarting.
So it's just time for me to check that we have the.
But I can see everything that is on the screen.
Okay.
So. But I can see everything that.
Problem.
But I can see everything that is on the screen.
Time for me to check that we
just restarting. But I can see everything that is on the screen.
So it's just time for me to check that we
but I can see everything that is on the screen.
Okay.
So just restarting. But I can see.
Seems we have a loop.
I think that it comes from the live streaming on YouTube.
Oh.
But it will be solved.
So are you live streaming the presentation, the session?
Yes, actually Marie-Christine handles it. So
yeah, okay.
It's public, yes.
Oh. The presentation.
I think it's okay now.
Yes, actually Marie-Christine handles it. So,
yeah, okay.
Marie-Christine, perhaps it would be better if you could lower the YouTube or even close it. I mean, it's
I think now it's okay. I think it's okay now.
Yes, actually Marie-Christine handles it. So,
okay.
It seems better if you could lower the YouTube or even close it. I mean,
it's okay. It's okay. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think now it's okay.
It is.
You don't have echo, right? You had echo for some time, but I think
echo. No echo. Now it's
no
clear.
echo. It's fine.
Yep.
Okay. So Antoine, are you with us? Or you?
I'm with you, but I have quite some balance problem. It seems on the screen, at least. I'm going to try to hold the position for a moment, but I'm going to try to make it.
Yes. Okay. So what I propose is maybe you didn't hear me, but I propose to everybody to nominate Corinne as the president of the jury. Will you?
Yeah, I agreed to that.
Okay. So then I am going to give the floor to Corinne just to give the floor to Pantelis, but maybe we can Corinne. Decide in which order you will ask questions to people, or as usual, I mean, rapporteurs, and then nothing.
First rapporteurs as usual, and then
and probably I will be the last one, right? Okay. So
thank you, Marie-Christine. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So I'm very happy actually to be together with you all today. I wish we had time. Do we have time actually for a very short introduction? Because we don't know each other. Maybe you know each other, and then we will leave the entire time to Pantelis to present his work. And I'm really looking forward to hearing that beautiful work. Okay, so maybe Marie-Christine, everybody knows you.
I can present myself very quickly to start.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a research director at the Public Health Research Institute in France, INSERM, and I lead an INSERM unit, and from also Sorbonne University and University Paris 13. So what we in this team, we work on knowledge engineering techniques for decision making, for sharing data, specifically in the healthcare domains. And for the in relation with Pantelis, we had a visitor for 2 years now in 16 and 17, I think, maybe the dates are not these ones, but anyway, it was Vasilis Koutkias, and we started a big collaboration with Vasilis, and this co-direction of Pantelis' thesis start from the stay Vasilis had in Paris for 2 years with a Marie Curie Fellowship. Okay.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Marie-Christine. Who would like to say a few words?
I can start
Yeah, sure.
if that's okay. Manolis Tsiknakis. I am by degree an electrical and computer engineer, but I've devoted all my research and academic life in working in the domain of biomedicine.
Mhm.
I was initially up to 2012 a researcher at the Foundation for Research and Technology, HELAS, known as FORTH. In 2012, I also took an academic position in the local technical university here on Crete. So I live and work in the island of Crete. And as I said, my main area for work is mainly biomedical informatics, but of course, biomedical engineering as well. I acted as a rapporteur, and I simply want to say that I really enjoyed reading and studying, as I said in my report, the work, and I'm looking forward to the public presentation.
Okay, thank you. So our colleague, is it Dr. Kostas or Dr. Stamatopoulos?
Corinne, Kostas is fine.
Okay.
So I'm Kostas Stamatopoulos. I'm a hematologist, but I should most probably say that I'm a physician scientist. I'm the director of the Institute of Applied Biosciences, where Pantelis is working, and where Vasilis was also a researcher. I will not say more about Vasilis, only that we are missing him sorely. My research interest focuses on 3 areas. It's biology of lymphoid cancers, patient empowerment and care, and precision medicine with all that it takes, including real-world evidence generation.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dart, would you like to go on?
Dr. Dart, we cannot hear you.
No. Yeah.
You should unmute yourself, please.
Okay, sorry. I'm Thierry Dart. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm working at the ANS. It's a French national e-health agency, and we are developing a national information system, also all guidelines on e-health, especially on security and interoperability. And for pharmacovigilance, for example, we have built a national portal for pharmacovigilance where patients and also medical doctors can declare, can put their very adverse event they can detect. Of course, it's passive pharmacovigilance. And I work also 11 years in the European Hospital of Paris, when we had a large information system dedicated to patients.
Right, thank you. Our last colleague, Dr. Pariant.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm a professor of pharmacology at the University of Bordeaux. I'm heading the pharmacovigilance center from the Aquitaine region and some overseas departments. And as part of this activity and of my research activity, I did quite some work on signal detection from spontaneous reporting data. But I'm also heading a pharmacoepidemiology research unit within the INSERM U1219 Research Center, which is the Bordeaux Population Health one. And so I'm also involved in real world evidence, as was previously said by one of my colleagues from the jury, and I acted as a rapporteur for this thesis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we've heard everybody. So I will just say a few words. I'm a professor in nephrology in Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital in Sorbonne University. And I'm mostly a clinician. I'm mostly involved into patient education research, patient empowerment, and more recently in the last 5 years, I'm trying to be part of the new strategies using digital health for the sake of improvement of quality of care, but mostly on a clinical point of view. Besides, I have a couple of projects involving researchers in different labs working on artificial intelligence algorithms, but mostly in the field of drug-induced toxicity and onconephrology. So thank you, all of you, to be here today. I would like to welcome our candidate, Pantelis Natsiavas, and I would maybe like to hand him the microphone to, because we're all here together to hear his work, and we are looking forward to it. So I don't know how much time did you plan to give a presentation, Pantelis?
I suppose about 40 minutes, 35 or 40 minutes or something like that.
Okay, I think it's fine. And then we need to have some time to, of course, to discuss your work, and we will do it actively. So please go on, and we'll listen to you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here. My name is Pantelis Natsiavas, and I will present my PhD thesis focusing on novel methods to support active pharmacovigilance in the clinical environment, supervised by Dr. Marie-Christine Joland, director at LIMIX, located at Paris. This thesis was originally co-supervised by Vasilis Koutias, who unfortunately passed away exactly 1 year ago, and has since then been substituted by Dr. Kostas Stamatopoulos, my director at INAB CERT. This thesis has been partly financed by a research project named PV Clinical, which was co-financed by European and Greek national funds, and also to some extent by other institutional funds here at INAB CERT. A few words to introduce myself. I come from Greece, and I work for the Institute of Applied Biosciences, also known as INAB, which is located in Thessaloniki, northern Greece, and is part of the Center for Research and Technology Hellas, also known as CERT. Providing a high-level outline of the presentation, first of all, in the introduction part, I will try to present the big picture, identify the problem that this thesis aims to solve, and then provide some key definitions. Finally, I will also present the formal hypothesis, the objectives of this thesis, and the methodology applied. The second part of the presentation will focus on the state of the art, namely the results of the systematic literature review, which was the first paper published during my PhD. Then the regulatory context and some management aspects will also be elaborated, namely the business processes related with pharmacovigilance, as they were also published in one of my papers. The fourth part will present one of the main outcomes of this thesis, the user goals and challenges identified regarding the integration of intelligent, let me call them IT systems in the clinical context, also based on one of the papers published during my PhD. The fifth part will provide an overview of some technical developments which were elaborated in order to investigate the challenges of employing knowledge engineering approaches aiming to support pharmacovigilance in the clinical environment. Finally, I will present another outcome of this thesis, namely the definition of the concept of active pharmacovigilance in the context of the so-called learning healthcare system paradigm, and then the presentation will be concluded. Moving to the introduction section, aiming to define the objectives of this thesis and also provide some background. First of all, describing the problem. Drug safety is indeed a major issue, as also shown by estimations provided by some studies. I will not insist on the numbers as they are only estimations and they cannot be easily calculated or verified. Still, these estimations show that drug safety is a major issue regarding public health, as it causes a vast number of hospitalizations and deaths per year. Obviously, adverse drug reactions also lead to very high financial burden too. Providing some background information regarding how drug safety works, as you know better than me, drugs efficacy and safety are evaluated via a series of clinical trials, regardless of the size of their size. However, even the biggest clinical trials will engage only a specific number of patients, some thousands of patients at the maximum, and cannot cover all potential real-world situations. For example, no clinical trial could cover all potential comorbidities, drug-to-drug interactions, food interactions, or other factors. Therefore, post-marketing surveillance has been identified as a necessary process. Actually, post-marketing surveillance is a process which is now at least well-defined and regulated, at least in the developed world. Typically, spontaneous report systems are engaged, also known as yellow card systems, enabling the submission of potential adverse drug reaction reports, and then their further statistical processing and potentially further review by groups of experts. However, it should be noted that the drug safety processes applied in the clinical practice are a little bit vague. While there are indeed some hospitals applying systematic processes to support drug safety, as you know, this cannot be considered a widely accepted a standard practice. And this is where the whole idea of this PhD starts. Some key definitions: pharmacovigilance is defined as the science and activities related to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or any other possible drug-related problems. Pharmacovigilance signals is another term which should be defined, potential new or partially documented adverse drug reactions which are supported by evidence but have not yet been confirmed. If somebody looks for definitions regarding the term active pharmacovigilance, he or she could identify that there is no universally accepted and clear definition. The best I can find, at least, is the following. Active pharmacovigilance is a systematic process that seeks to identify safety issues through epidemiologic analysis of healthcare databases. But sometimes this definition also, this term also is used also extended to other kinds of web data sources. So the overall rationale of this thesis starts from identifying a key problem. This problem is that despite the fact that drug safety is a very important issue, still it does not have the necessary support in terms of technical tools, while data science and analytics, etc., are at least to some extent used. Still, intelligent technologies, which gained a big hype for other domains, they are not typically integrated in pharmacovigilance activities. To this end, clinical context came up as one of the most challenging environments, but obviously we did not restrict ourselves in the clinical environments only. This is where the concept of the learning healthcare system came up and seemed highly relevant. The learning healthcare system paradigm, the LHS paradigm, consists of three branches. Data to knowledge, or D2K branch, aims to integrate information from community and convert them to knowledge. Knowledge to performance, or K2B branch, refers to the practical exploitation of knowledge to real-world benefits. Finally, performance to data, or P2D branch, aims to feed the next iteration of the cycle with data based on the performance and ideally combine it with new lessons learned from the community data. So we decided to investigate how this paradigm could be used in terms of pharmacovigilance, and how intelligent, let me call them technical paradigms, technical advances like machine learning and so on. We focus on knowledge engineering, how these technical advances could indeed facilitate active pharmacovigilance, especially in the clinical environment, based also, and this is a crucial point, on end user input. Now, what is knowledge engineering and why is this important? The formal definition is that knowledge engineering is the discipline that elaborates on the theories, methods, and tools for developing knowledge-intensive applications, overlapping with the domain of artificial intelligence and sometimes overlapping with technical approaches like machine learning, and which has very recently gained a lot of attention. Knowledge engineering can be split in activities like knowledge extraction, typically conducted via natural language processing and text mining techniques. Knowledge representation, typically using rules or ontologies. Knowledge elicitation, for example, which is typically conducted using reasoning upon formal mathematical logics like first-order logic or description logics. And then knowledge integration or knowledge dissemination, which could also be considered activities of knowledge engineering. We consider that these activities are crucial if somebody really wants to integrate intelligent technical systems in the healthcare domain to support drug safety. So presenting the formal hypothesis, it could be stated as follows. The integration of emerging knowledge engineering technologies could be used to revision active pharmacovigilance as a new clinical functioning paradigm based on the analysis of the respective business processes and user goals. The specific objectives of this thesis are the following: to provide a detailed overview of the research work conducted regarding the application of knowledge engineering for drug safety purposes, and obviously highlight potential research gaps. Then the second objective would be to identify the business processes related with pharmacovigilance. The third objective would be to define a set of user goals based on end users' input, in this case, clinicians and pharmacovigilance professionals. And then the pilot development of technical artifacts supporting the integration of active pharmacovigilance in the clinical context in order to gain some hands-on experience and lessons learned. So methodologically, it should be highlighted that end user input was collected using the so-called design thinking approach, which is also called user-centered approach, user-centered design approach, which is an iterative way of getting input from the end users based on prototypes, and getting their feedback is used to improve the next step of the design. All the work except the systematic literature review was conducted following this rationale. In this screenshot, you can see a screenshot of a think aloud testing session conducted with one of the doctors participating in the project. So the main steps to fulfill these objectives are shown in this figure. Starting from the hypothesis, a systematic literature review was conducted. Then the regulatory framework in EU was elaborated to support the mining of the respective business processes, as pharmacovigilance is a highly regulated domain and therefore legislation plays an important role. Based on these business processes and end user input, of course, the respective user goals were identified. And finally, based on all these insights, the active pharmacovigilance term was redefined as part of the learning healthcare system paradigm, and a model is proposed. Describing the first step of the process, namely the systematic review. This was the first paper published during my PhD on May 2019 and in Frontiers in Pharmacology. The aim of the study was to investigate which are the main knowledge engineering methods applied in the drug safety domain, upon which knowledge models and data sources are they applied, what is their added value for drug safety, and what are the potential gaps for further research. To this end, a set of analysis criteria were defined, and then the papers were mapped to the respective values of these so-called analysis criteria, namely the knowledge engineering core activities, the computational approaches used, the core drug safety activities, and some topics which were specially which were specially highlighted as they were identified to gain special attention during the review. Furthermore, the data sources used and the reference terminologies were also analyzed. Methodologically, the PRISMA methodology was used. As shown in this figure, we originally collected more than 800 papers, and we finally included 80 of them. Highlighting some of the systematic literature reviews results, we can see, for example, in this slide that signal detection, the analysis of the respective mechanism of action, and the investigation of drug interactions were the most prominent goals of the reviewed works. Furthermore, we can see that adverse drug event reporting and adverse drug event monitoring were the most neglected drug safety core activities. This figure, the next figure, depicts, shows the linking between the knowledge engineering core activities and the drug safety core activities. We can see that knowledge dissemination is the most neglected knowledge engineering core activity. You can see it only takes a small part of the overall papers. So in this figure, in the next figure, we can see the links between the identified drug safety special topics and data source categories. It is not surprising that, that spontaneous report systems identified by the acronym SRS are the most prominent data source category. Similarly, we can see that in this figure, the links between the identified knowledge engineering core activities and the respective data source categories. Here we can see that also genetics and biochemical databases are also one of the prominent data source categories. Finally, this slide shows the main limitations identified during this systematic literature review. I should highlight the significant dependence on manual work and significant gaps also regarding the evaluation and validation approaches, as no there was not identified a homogeneous approach regarding the validation of these works. So, summarizing the key findings of the systematic review, first of all, it was clearly evident that a lot of work is done on natural language processing. It should be highlighted also that while structured knowledge sources are widely used, including thesauri, taxonomies, and ontologies, despite that, description, logic, semantics, and reasoning are not widely investigated. Perhaps due to their computational resources requirements and the reasoning performance issues, but this is probably only one part of the problem. A gap, at least to my opinion, is that systems pharmacology approaches were also not emphasized, at least to the extent I would expect. I should also say that while encouraging results were presented, these results were not validated via a widely accepted systematic approach, let me say, and therefore they could be questioned relatively easy. However, the most important finding for me is that I could not really spot a paper showing the use of the benefits of knowledge engineering, namely the use of ontologies, reasoning, and similar approaches in clinical routine. And this was the key finding, in my opinion. Moving to the second and the third step of this thesis approach, namely the overview of the regulatory framework in European Union and the analysis of the respective business processes, I will present the paper that was published in the International Conference on Informatics, Management and Technology in Healthcare in July 2020. This paper aimed to provide an overview on the legal context and also provide an overview of some management aspects to reach this goal. The legislation and the respective literature were reviewed, and they were also elaborated based on the PV clinical project partners also gave input. As pharmacovigilance is a highly regulated domain, these business processes are at least partly depending on the respective regulatory framework. So regarding this regulatory framework currently applied in EU, there is a clear milestone, an EU directive which was applied on July 2012. This directive enforced the deployment of national spontaneous report systems, enabling the submission of citizen reports, which was not the case until then. Beyond that, this regulatory update also enforced pharma industry to maintain updated risk management plans and periodic safety update reports. Based on all the above, the European Medicine Association collects all the related data, and the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, also called PRAC, is the finally responsible stakeholder for drug safety in EU. The main stakeholders are the regulatory and drug safety monitoring organizations like EMA, of course, pharma industry, and also contract research organizations, which many times act as subcontractors of big pharma companies to conduct either clinical trials or conduct pharmacovigilance activities. And finally, hospitals, as we also consider clinical environment to be in the scope of this thesis of this domain. The business processes identified for the clinical context are summarized in this slide. These business processes were analyzed in terms of the actors engaged, the user types, and also the data which are typically used. More specifically, the following three business processes were identified for the clinical context. BP1 would refer to outpatient visits. BP2 would refer to patient hospitalizations. BP3 would refer to service evaluations, which are typically conducted to ensure quality in various hospitals or healthcare settings, or at least they should be conducted. Here you can see the respective business processes identified for non-clinical environment. BP4 refers to clinical trials, and while it could also be considered referring to the clinical environment, it still does not refer to typical clinical practice. So whether we would consider it part of the clinical environment or not is a rather arbitrary or marginal decision. But anyway, I decided to put it in the non-clinical environment. Business process 5 refers to the need to periodically update safety reports, a process typically conducted by pharma industry or their subcontractors, usually contract research organizations. Similarly, BP6 refers to their obligation to conduct weekly literature reviews. And finally, BP7 refers to the overall risk management approach and decisions which need to be taken in order to ensure drug safety. Based on the previous steps and also on end user input, the user goals were mined. This is the third paper. Originally, these user goals were published in Medinfo conference held in Lyon, France, in August 2019. Of course, they were further refined along the PV clinical project course, but based on this iterative design approach of the project. So, focusing on the clinical environment, the most prominent challenges highlighted during this process are shown in this slide. First of all, lack of time was a key issue for the clinicians. While this research was conducted with clinicians in Greece, I suppose the same thing applies more or less in Europe. So the second challenge was lack of expertise. It was clear that not all doctors are familiar with pharmacovigilance processes, which is something to be expected as pharmacovigilance processes are not part of their typical education programs. So the third challenge would be the adaptation to the clinical workflow. As we all know, doctors should focus on their patients and not on using IT systems or browsing through data frames and figures and so on. So adapting intelligent tools in the clinical workflow is always a challenge. The fourth challenge identified was the clinicians highlighted that the evidence provided are usually inadequate. Statistics and numbers do not necessarily provide evidence for drug safety, and decision-making should be based on evidence. In this case, clinical decision-making is, of course, important, very, very, very crucial. So the quality of data provided is a key issue here. Finally, Handling big data could always be a complex issue. For example, data overloading could be a significant problem as too much data confuse decision makers, in this case, the clinicians, and this is always a big challenge. As user goals were one of the main outcomes of this thesis, I will elaborate on some of them. Obviously, some of them could be considered trivial and expected, but others could be generalizable and quite important, at least in my view, in terms of supporting the integration of these emerging technical paradigms in the healthcare domain. We can see that, for example, in user goal 4, end users identified the need to have access on multiple data sources beyond spontaneous report systems, which is the typical data source used in pharmacovigilance system. This is very important. Both well-established sources, for example, spontaneous report systems, as well as emerging sources, emerging data sources, should be investigated for their potential benefit, for their potential merit in drug safety studies. In user goal 6, we can see it's identified the need to exploit the special characteristics of each data source. Each data source provides data of different types with different features, exploitable in terms of drug safety, or at least potentially useful for that. For example, but the respective statistical measures should also be adapted on them. For example, while disproportionality analysis statistical measures like proportional reporting ratio, also known as PRR, and reporting odds ratio, also known as ROR, they might be extremely useful in individual case safety report databases, spontaneous report systems, but these metrics might be totally irrelevant for other data sources like social media or even observational healthcare databases, and therefore each data source special features should be taken into account. Furthermore, in user goal 8, end users identified the need for a pausable user engagement scenario. A save for now and resume later feature was identified as a must-have because pharmacovigilance processes are time-consuming and laborious, especially in the clinical environment where pharmacovigilance is not the healthcare professional's top priority. Such a feature would be of the highest importance because the healthcare professional might be interrupted at any point. So in user goal 10 and maybe overlapping user goal is the need to organize the overall approach in terms of investigation scenarios instead of typical searches was also identified. The difference is that an investigation scenario could be interrupted and left aside for now as other priorities might emerge, which is of course typical in the clinical environment where patients, as already said, are always the top priority. Albeit the proven value of direct searches for signal detection, the formulation of investigation scenarios could be even more beneficiary as they give more depth in terms of time, and this should be beneficial. But notwithstanding, a certain quick search investigation feature can also be included, and this indeed was also decided as part of the PV Clinical web platform, which is developed in the context of this project. Via all this process, including the design of the PV Clinical platform, the web platform of the project, it became clear that the new intelligent technical paradigms like knowledge engineering and machine learning and neural networks and you name it, they indeed are worth to be investigated in terms of pharmacovigilance as new emerging data sources are exploited, like observational healthcare databases or social media or whatever. However, the integration of these technologies and data sources come with some very important challenges, which while they are at least to some extent related with the technologies per se, they also go beyond them and also are related with legal, ethical, and regulatory issues. So Well, as you can see, I have tried to avoid too many technical details in my manuscript. I am an engineer by background, and these thesis outcomes are also based on lessons learned by technical developments and hands-on experience. So a number of technical works were also elaborated, and they are going to be completed as part of the future work. However, I should also say that the term future work might be a little bit misleading here, as these are things that we have started working on and have progressed a lot. However, they are not yet ready to publish. As part of the ongoing technical developments, I will show you a part of the clinical platform, of the PV clinical platform. This is how the end user defines an investigation scenario. And here is how an end user might browse through the terms of the MEDRA hierarchy, of the MEDRA concept hierarchy, to identify the respective adverse drug reactions. And here he defines the final scenarios. Here is the respective form with the selected drugs and the selected conditions. You can see that he could select multiple conditions and using also synonyms and so on. And then the end user moves to the respective workspaces. Here you can see the OpenFDA workspace, but these data are from the FAER system, FDA Adverse Event Reporting System. And you can see here only one screenshot, as just to provide you with some context of the technical work. Another line of work which would be to build a knowledge graph based on the OpenPV signal model. OpenPV signal is a model which was published back in 2018 to support the modeling and the distribution of pharmacovigilance signal reports data in a fair, compliant manner, comparable with FAIR principles. Finally, another line of work would have to do with lower level data, aiming to build a systems pharmacology ontology, focusing on the integration of pathway information using state-based models. The ultimate goal would be to combine ontological, namely description logics-based reasoning along machine learning on state-based models. This figure explains the whole idea of how such an ontology could be useful in terms of the clinical practice combined with lab exams. The idea is that based on pharmacogenomics data sources and pathway signaling databases, we could model this information using state-based models. We are thinking about using Markov models, actually, and build an ontological knowledge graph. Then using personalized information as input, for example, genetic profiling or lab exams or lab exam results and so on, we could conduct reasoning upon this knowledge graph to infer potential adverse drug reactions in a personalized manner. Finally, after identifying the aforementioned challenges and these lessons learned from this hands-on development, we attempt to revision the term of active pharmacovigilance as part of the overall learning healthcare system paradigm in the view of these new technical advances and the insights and the challenges they come with. It is clear that while intelligent technologies and the new real-world data sources are proven to be very valuable, they are also proven hard to integrate in routine medical practice. Therefore, the need for a paradigm shift is identified. This is why we think of the learning healthcare system paradigm. We argue that LHS, this learning healthcare system paradigm, could provide the basis of a paradigm shift for drug safety, enabling the integration of drug safety procedures in the clinical routine practice on the one hand, and also on the other hand, it could enable clinical data to support the drug safety processes per se. I will not introduce the LHS paradigm in detail, as I already have done that. A key issue is that LHS is trying to tackle the so-called translational gap. It has been proven that the translation of a research idea towards care might take too long. As you know, this gap has led to disasters regarding drug safety, as it has been proven in the past that there is a big delay between first evidence of patient harm and actual action taken. Obviously, there are no silver bullets. As you know better than me, such a paradigm shift comes with many challenges, which are both technical and operational. As such a paradigm shift includes both factors. These challenges are not on the same level necessarily, but they overlap in many senses. Mentality change, management commitment, funding, biases of all kinds. Interoperability is always an issue, technical interoperability. Usability should be also identified as a top priority, otherwise these systems are not going to be really used. And also there are issues regarding information security. For example, how can somebody guarantee that the training of these intelligent algorithms has not been maliciously tackled or whatever? So based on all the above, and most importantly on the user goals mined during this thesis, the proposed model requires that all branches of the LHS paradigm are refined in terms of drug safety, having patient in the center of this process. For example, adjusting the LHS loop, the D2K branch converting data to knowledge should also focus on including personal data and not only community data. Furthermore, it should include emerging data sources and patient-reported outcomes. On the K2P branch, aiming to convert knowledge to performance, disseminating back to community would be a necessity. Regarding the clinical environment per se, new, more dynamic models in terms of updating clinical practice guidelines should also be investigated. Furthermore, processes to update alerts, even the alerts which are provided via clinical decision support systems, should also be reviewed, as they need to dynamically include knowledge produced by recent data. Finally, on the P2D branch, on the branch focusing on converting, aiming to get data from the evaluation of performance, specific KPIs, key performance indicators should be defined, and the updates on the various knowledge artifacts. And by that, I refer also to the clinical practice guidelines and the rules used to produce alerts in the clinical decision support systems. These updates need also to be evaluated to produce data, which are going also to feed the new learning cycle. As a whole, this overall process should, this overall process should also focus on transparency to ensure patient trust. We all see how these fake news issues keep coming up and how difficult it is to recover from trust damage, and how we also have this anti-vaccine movement as an example. We talk about drug safety here, so and patient trust is of crucial importance. As I repeat, this overall paradigm should keep patient and her safety at the center. Moving towards patient-centric pharmacovigilance, we also argue that pharmacovigilance should move forward from population-level statistics towards a more personalized approach using a personalized benefit-risk ratio. Currently, pharmacovigilance is based, as you know, on population-level statistics, and while these are very important, obviously, still there are other information which need to be taken into account. These information are heavily related with personalized response to medicines, and they are not systematically taken into account today to protect patients. We argue that information coming from patient-reported outcomes, pharmacogenomics, lifestyle info, even personal preferences should be combined with community data and population-level statistics to produce an index like the one we propose, the so-called patient-centric benefit-risk ratio, or PCBRR. Such an index should be able to be calculated via these intelligent technical tools, and it should be able to produce personalized hints for patients receiving a specific drug in order to protect them using also their personal information. I should also say that knowledge engineering could play an important role to this index, as all these heterogeneous data sources would need to be integrated, and then meaningful knowledge should be produced out of them. Therefore, knowledge engineering core activities like knowledge extraction and knowledge integration and knowledge elicitation could play an important role. Based on the above, we provide an updated definition of active pharmacovigilance. Active pharmacovigilance could be defined as the systematic hot pursuit of real-world evidence in all possible data sources, aiming to learn in order to support personalized clinical decision-making based also on individual information, including patient as an actor of the actual decision process. Concluding this presentation and summing things up, I would like to recapitulate the highlights of this PhD. We conducted a thorough systematic literature review, identifying the respective research gaps. We analyzed the pharmacovigilance-related business processes, and based on user input, we also identified a number of user goals which could guide the design and the integration of intelligent IT systems supporting drug safety in the clinical environment. I should also highlight that all the above are also based on technical developments and the lessons learned via these technical developments, namely the ongoing building process of open PV signal knowledge graph, the development of systems pharmacology ontology, and the PV clinical platform, of course. Finally, based on the above, we provided the definition of active pharmacovigilance and a model based on the paradigm of learning healthcare system, also proposing a personalized index, the so-called patient-centric benefit-risk ratio, or PCBRR. In my final slide, I would like to express my gratitude to my late mentor and friend, Vasilis Koutias, who unfortunately passed away exactly 1 year ago. Without him, this PhD would not have started. I should close my presentation wholeheartedly thanking my supervisor, Dr. Marie-Christine Zolan, and my director, Dr. Kostas Stamatopoulos. They have both honored me with their full support, and without this support, this PhD would not have been completed indeed. Finally, I should also thank the whole team of eHealth Lab in ABSERT, and especially the PV Clinical Project team who supported me all this time. Thank you. Feel free to ask questions.
Thank you for this beautiful presentation. I think it's going to be open now for discussion. And I would like to invite first then the two rapporteurs of this work to begin with their questions. So who would like to start?
I have no preference. I was expecting this to start on the way we were organized on the PhD presentation, but I can start if you prefer.
Okay.
So I will. So first, thank you very much, Pantelis, for your presentation. I must say it was very interesting, as was your document. I would say also maybe it was a bit fast. I must recognize that your PhD document is very rich. I'm coming from the pharmacovigilance side, I would say, and I have already potentially some knowledge in the problems you're dealing with, at least from the practical aspect or routine aspect, but also from the research side, with part of my research integrated some new tools or machine learning or natural language processing. But still, I learned a lot of what at least the amount of I was ignoring before I started to read. So it was really something tremendous. First, from I think the real nice and fully useful state of the art that you're making at STARS. It's the field that you entered into and what you tried to grab is clearly exploding with so many initiatives. It's impossible to follow, and it was very useful for me to have these state of the art. Where are we? What was done? What were the techniques used? To what purpose? What were they used? What it was used? And I would say that I really fully appreciated this review. Potentially, what I missed a little bit in this presentation was, okay, here is what everybody's building, and here is what everybody's trying to make with new techniques in the field of drug safety. For each method, what is the goal? What is the addition? What is the complement that it's trying to fulfill compared to the existing? Can you provide detail on that?
Well, I think that what you are asking actually is part of the problem. Is one of the reasons why this huge gap of not really exploiting these technologies in the clinical routine. I think you found the bug in the system. I mean, I don't think that. I also have the impression that these works focus on a very specific problem. For example, they do very good work on conducting natural language processing on a very specific context, but in real world use, the contexts are not that clear. This is why, of course, it's very challenging to get things, to get value of all these things, of all these technologies in real world in real world settings. So this is why after the state of the art review, we thought that getting end users input and defining these user goals would perhaps make some difference, because they would identify the practical challenges, and we could try a small step at a time to make things a little bit better. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but on natural language processing, of course, for example, which is the most prominent approach, which is the most prominent technical approach, most of these works focus on reviewing systematic, on reviewing papers, on reviewing literature, published literature, okay, which is of course of huge importance in pharmacovigilance and in clinical practice in general. However, reviewing papers is not the only data source. So while we could stand back and expect from natural language processing a great breakthrough, based on this end users input, they also told us that look other data sources, which of course was no surprise. I mean, of course there are attempts to use these data sources. Okay, this is not the first time that somebody says it, of course, but it shows, in my opinion, that the works focusing on knowledge engineering parts have not yet adequately tackled this issue.
Yeah, I must agree with you. I have the feeling in this aspect, because it's really translational science, and it's really pluridisciplinary work, and that's one of the issue with some of the theoretical work is grounded on potentially literature review only, and not the needs from the users, which you really try to envision differently in your thesis. And that is why it's not a problem of acceptance. It's not that it's not well accepted, it's that it's not well understood, the objective in which it was developed, and the other way back is true also. So I fully agree with you, and I think this was something that was coming out of your thesis also, in terms of originality of the approach to really focus on defining the business processes and the user goals. What are they working for? What do they want? What do they need? So this is something I really appreciated. I challenged you in my report on the presentation that you were giving on the usual process of the drug development, and the knowledge that we were having at the time drugs were marketed, and potentially it was because of course the rolling reviews on COVID vaccine that makes a completely different process. Even these are the same steps, it's not completely the same moment and timing and well, and different organization in time for the things. Do you think that it would change your approach? Do you think that this is probably something to which the techniques and approach that you are proposing could help in the future?
Well, do you refer to these attempts of fast-track drug development models?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, indeed, on one aspect, yes, such a model could indeed facilitate fast-track drugs development, as it focuses on better data collection, including both clinical and lifestyle data, which are not yet the case, as far as I can tell, at least. So I think that in principle the answer is yes, but obviously I have to say also that the challenge here is how you could make this model a little bit more realistic in terms of adjusting it in each country's real settings, because it's an easy thing to say that describing a model on an abstract level is a lot easier than transferring it to real-world circumstances. In Europe, for example, each country has a different healthcare delivery model. So this model should be translated to each country's specifics. Each country has its own even reimbursement system, and even clinical practice guidelines are not really the same because they are adjusted to the specific infrastructures available. So saying that a model could be the answer for everything, I would not dare to say that. But I think that it could be a step forward.
If I don't unmute, you will not understand what I'm saying. Sorry for that. Thank you very much for your answer. It was pretty clear, and I hope you would have answered that. I had the second challenge I gave you in my comments. That was about the remarkable outcomes that you pointed out in your documents. It's on page 87, page 88, if you want to follow. And so. Okay, this was some I would say, that is my opinion, of course, so you can challenge me also, some interesting developments that were made using untraditional techniques, I would say, in the field of drug safety. But I would not obviously come to your appraisal that all were remarkable outcomes, and I pointed out one especially, that was the seventh one, regarding the Guillain-Barré syndrome, and the conclusion that live attenuated vaccines had a lower chance of inducing such neurological complication than the trivalent inactivated blah 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 vaccines, and so. Well, as I disagreed, I at least with the conclusion of the paper, not fully with the thing. My question was more theoretically: how did you define the remarkable outcomes? How did you consider that some would be remarkable and some would not be?
Thank you. Well, yes, thank you for the question. Actually, it was a subjective decision. Okay. I would say that a remarkable finding would be if something might lead to potentially a clinically relevant decision-making improvement. So in this paper that you specifically referred, I could not really confirm their outcome myself. So I just based on what the authors suggest. I can say that this is a well-known team. They have built one of the most prominent ontologies in the field. So while I cannot really verify their findings, I can say that not only for this paper, but as a whole in this domain, I had identified as a gap actually that there was not a systematic, a universally well-defined approach of validating the results. So this is a general issue, not only for this paper, I'm afraid, but my answer to you would be that I identified the remarkable results based on what the authors say. I could not really, I didn't really validate their remarks myself. So this is the clear answer. But there is a gap here in almost all of the papers I have seen.
Yeah, but so don't worry. This is your opinion, and this is my opinion, and so on. We all know that the opinion of one cannot be the truth. So you're not wrong, and I'm not right. It's only to get an explanation on the process. And actually, it was. It was because of the interest I had that I pointed that out. I completely missed that paper. I did not see it initially, but then when I see that you were pointing out these researchers a remarkable outcome, then I went to the manuscript to see what they had performed, because I was really interested in the vaccine safety issue. And honestly, I think that the methodological aspect is great, and the development they made is really something clever. But at the end, it's one of the pitfalls in drug safety and especially in pharmacovigilance, because the technique is wonderful, that they forget the limitation of the data, and at the end the conclusion is really of what it's impressive, and they conclude that they can say that some vaccines have different risks for the Guillain-Barré syndrome based on the technique they used, forgetting that the data that they used to do so cannot allow saying that at the end. So it was my surprise, and the fact that I was disappointed that the remarkable outcome could be maybe not so remarkable at the end.
Antoine, am I allowed a comment here?
Yeah, sure.
That was a beautiful statement, and it seems like it could be the last sentence in today's editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine on the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, that in the end, with only 153 individuals between ages 18 and 20 vaccinated in the Moderna trial, how can we get reliable results and draw reliable conclusions about safety and efficacy? And in the end, when you have in the time period of just a few months, some 200 cases of COVID in the study group, how can you draw conclusions that would be amenable to, solid criticism? And the answer is you can't. Where is the data?
Yeah, and probably not in press release.
And it didn't prevent them. It didn't prevent them from making it to the New England, and it didn't prevent the German government from pushing the EMA for a super speedy approval.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I share your points on many aspects. But as I would spend too many time censoring you at the moment, I believe, and discussing it, I will try to go back on Pantelis. But really, I share your points. So maybe I would be involved in the monitoring of these vaccines, and so I have to keep some of my views. Finally, there was something very interesting in your presentation that you were saying about the traditional disproportionality measures, that they would not be mandatorily adequate if applied to other data sources, and you were mentioning, for instance, the electronic healthcare records, and that was a question to me, because actually this method derived from traditional cohort association methods or risk control association methods, and so using them in electronic healthcare records would actually maybe make more sense than using the derivation in spontaneous reporting systems. So can you comment on that?
Well, I think that we should be very careful before transferring statistical measures from one data source to the other. I'm not really sure about my phrasing when I was presenting, but I can say that, for example, when you take a statistical measure like PRR, typically used in spontaneous report systems, and get it and use it in a specific hospital setting. If you have an observational database based on a specific on one and single electronic healthcare record system, then you should be very careful, because you cannot really you have to see if this drug is used in what analogies and how analogically it's administered or prescribed and so on. Similarly, when you take observational healthcare databases like from a research network, where you don't even get to see the data sometimes, but you just form a research query, and then they execute it. Who has the whole picture before deciding which are the statistical measures to be applied? So, I mean, the easiest thing, of course, would be to get the already working parts, computational parts, and reuse them. Okay, this is the starting point. I agree with that, but these computational approaches should be reviewed on a case by case, in my opinion, at least in these principal levels, in these initial levels. Okay.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I was just surprised because the proportional reporting ratio is basically a risk ratio twisted for spontaneous reporting systems, but putting it back in the observational electronic medical records, for instance, or medical administrative data sources would be putting it back where it belonged originally. So in this specific setting, it would not maybe be so problematic, but applying to web data or tweets or whatever, that would be completely different. I agree with you. And at the end, this is my final question because I want to leave time to the others, of course. So if this was not the case, I could go on for probably a long time. I really appreciated all the graphic effort that you made on the representation on your data, and there was a massive amount of results, and really you made a very wise use of the graphics to make them easy to understand for the readers. And I would say that, but maybe for the figure on page 154.
Right.
Yeah, it's the user's goal from one side and the business processes from the others. I would say this one, I did not get it fully. I tried, but I just because it's the same color for many links, and there are so many links. I was at the end a bit lost, and I would like to have some more explanation on this one.
I am not really proud of this style. Okay, I have to admit. Okay, let me share let me share my manuscript. You refer to this figure, right?
Yeah, this one. I tried to follow the links. I tried, but
of course you couldn't. But the overall idea would be to show that all the user goals might be somehow related with the respective business processes. And here you can see that, for example, some of the user goals in the left side are not, are thicker than the others. So they get more links with the respective business processes. So the idea of the figure is not really to follow the links between all user goals. User goal 4 does not seem to be related with business process 1. Okay, just as an easy to see example. But of course, styling could be improved to make things better.
Yeah, but I understand more your objective for the presentation as you explain it now. So it's okay. It's just I didn't took it in the good way. Well, having said all that, I must say I really think this is an interesting work that you did, and I must say that I'm sorry, there's an helicopter here. I hope you're not. It's not too much noisy for you. It's indeed already very interesting, and there are some perspectives with it that are indeed more interesting even. So congratulations for what you've done already. I really appreciated the quality of the writing and its really pedagogical aspects. So I want to congratulate you on that, and I'm really waiting for the developments to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now maybe we can listen to is Professor Tsinakis the second report?
Yeah, it's Manolis. It's Manolis. Yes. Can you hear me? I am muted. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you fine.
Yes, it's a pleasure, as I already wrote and earlier repeated, to be part of the jury, to read and ask to evaluate the work presented by you, Pantelis. I want to reiterate the previous speaker statement regarding the quality of the writing and the clarity of the written text and arguments. Obviously, there are the topic is huge, and you've included a lot of different aspects of work in your effort in trying to respond to the title, which is very challenging, novel methods to support active pharmacovigilance in the clinical environment. So in relation to that title, I will, and some of the things that you wrote and some of the things that you've presented and discussed during your presentation, I have a few questions myself in trying to elaborate and make myself primarily better understand the scope, the focus, and the output of the work achieved. So I will start my questioning by from your last slide and your last statement, which I think is a statement about the contribution of the work, and you ended up saying that you the term and the notion of active pharmacovigilance has been around for a while. And you state that you redefined the notion of active pharmacovigilance, and that is a significant contribution. So can you please elaborate or restate or explain what do you mean by redefinition of the concept of active pharmacovigilance?
Well, indeed, it's a rather strong statement using the term defining a domain. So obviously, I'm not the first referring to active pharmacovigilance there. However, I thought that we needed a more updated definition. I could not find a clear definition of what active pharmacovigilance is, but and this is why I thought we really should provide a new definition of the term, an updated definition of the term. Perhaps I should not say redefining. Perhaps I should say updating the definition of active pharmacovigilance or something like that. I think that this verbal, let me say, definition is more focused based on this need to integrate more data sources, more real-world evidence sources, and to focus also on the personal, on the personalized aspect of decision making. Until now, the pharmacovigilance is mostly based on population level statistics, but I'm not a clinician, I'm a doctor, so perhaps I have it all wrong, but I get the impression that if you ask me, the definition of when somebody feels healthy or not is really a very personal. It is at least partially based in his personal view and personal opinion. So while I am a chronic patient myself, if you ask me, Pantelis, how do you feel? I will tell you perfect. So this shows that my personal view should also be taken into account when defining drug safety and risks for me. I mean, taking drugs, my quality of life might be affected, and I should have a say on that. This is why I think that these are the aspects that I feel they should also be included in the new view of active pharmacovigilance.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying in your answer is that not really redefining, but updating the definition of active pharmacovigilance in the context of current developments, which
Yes.
include a multitude of real-world data generation entities and processes and systems on the one hand, and knowledge engineering techniques in trying to make sense of that data on the other hand, which is totally fine, and I totally agree with that. So, having discussed that, going back to your, methodologically, you started rightly so with a thorough and very, very qualitative work in performing a systematic review of the literature, and you've reached some conclusions. And among those conclusions, if I remember correctly in your presentation as well, you say that you identified some gaps. For example, there is currently no emphasis on system pharmacology aspects, and again, no emphasis or no adequate emphasis on certain knowledge engineering approaches involved in the context of trying to develop systems and solutions for pharmacovigilance. And my question, it's probably in the text, although not clear to me, so that's why I'm asking a question to elaborate. What are the reasons for those missing? Is it technical constraints that forbid moving forward along those axes of work, or is it procedural issues that mainly, or both? What is the evidence that you?
I would say both, and I will discuss both of them. The technical reasons, as you probably know, when you build big ontologies or big ontological knowledge graphs, I would use this term, conducting the reasoning upon them using description logic reasoners, for example, and exploiting the semantics provided by AUL or RDF and this kind of stacks, this kind of technologies is a difficult task. I mean, I have even seen in this context, I can remember the paper referring to the DINT ontology, where, for example, which is great work. And when they tried to validate the use of such an ontology, they explicitly wrote down that we could not conduct reasoning on the whole ontology. So we had to break it down, we had to make it more lean, and then run our reasoner again, and then we came up with these conclusions. So one aspect is the computational process. I also having trying to do these things technically. I have also seen that that conducting the reasoning upon ontologies with many data is technically a very difficult thing to do. Okay, so this, in my opinion, is a very key issue. Another issue, I don't know if you would call it technical or procedural, is the lack of expertise. These technologies, knowledge engineering technologies, apart from NLP, have not really gained the attention they should, in my opinion. So when somebody refers to knowledge engineering, everybody thinks of natural language processing. When somebody talks about artificial intelligence, everybody thinks about machine learning. I have the feeling that even computer engineers are not that often equipped with what description logic reasoning is and what semantic web technologies are. I'm not really sure that they are part of formal training programs as they should be, in my opinion. But it's my personal opinion. I mean, obviously, nobody has to agree with that. So these are two key issues in my opinion. Another procedural issue regarding focusing now on the systems pharmacology aspect is that having quality data on the systems pharmacology level is a very difficult thing to do. So what would be quality data on systems pharmacology? Would be data which would be validated on the bench from biologists, using wet biology methods. So this is not an easy thing to do. It's a very expensive thing to do, and these kind of data sources do not are not easy to build. I mean, of course, we have Reactome, we have KEGG, we have such data sources, but these are, they were not available, at least to that extent, 15 years ago. So you could not, you could not really, when you conduct a systematic review for the last 10 years, it is totally normal to see that not many works focus on that. At least partly the answer is that data were not there. Okay. I have to say that while trying to build, one of the reasons trying to build this systems pharmacology ontology, one of the technical developments that I referred to was that I wanted to experiment with this data. And I was also thinking about applying machine learning upon them. So it is then when we saw that we needed to define a computational model, not only a representational model. I mean, getting data out of Reactome and representing them in a more convenient format, would be the step one. But then, if we wanted to conduct these machine learning approaches upon them, then we needed to have also computational models, which would be suitable, which would fit the data. And these models would also have to be trainable. So this is why we tried to move to state-based models and Markov models and this kind of things. These models, however, are not, in my opinion, there's not a widely accepted model, or not even a set of models who are widely accepted and used for these purposes. So this is another issue, but I would not call this a problem. I would call this a future work step, if I have to be honest. I understand that these things do not really happen in 1 year or two.
Definitely not. Definitely not for those of us that at least have been working in the area of trying to harmonize data, develop integrated solutions, respond to the issue of interoperability of systems, etc. Yes, it's a gradual process. Definitely, I need to agree with you on that. Going on into your second chapter, I have the following, and it's probably my misunderstanding, but my question is, your second objective relates to the issue of, you focus on identifying the business processes that relate to pharmacovigilance. My question is very simple. Why do you need to do that? In the context of your title, which I remind you, you focus on designing, developing, and hopefully piloting novel methods for instantiating active pharmacovigilance. So what was, I would imagine, I would expect that you would identify, although I understand the rationale of finding the key business processes that are the most applicable and closest to the issue of pharmacovigilance, I would expect a little bit more information from what at least I was able to find with respect to what methods, what novel methods, what novel tools, what novel technologies could be developed or are being developed, etc., etc. So can you slightly discuss that?
Yes, of course.
If you understand my question.
Yes, of course. Well, one of my major finding, my major conclusion was from the systematic review part was that it was clear that there was no practical use of these knowledge engineering approaches, or at least there was no big success story of these knowledge engineering approaches in clinical routine, okay, and in healthcare as a whole, obviously. So this is why we thought that we should heavily focus on the routine on the procedural aspect, because we understood that while these technical developments provide they are very useful developments. I mean, they provide progress. They could provide evidence, and or at least they could provide data. However, the procedural aspects were we thought would be very much important in translating these technical developments to produce real value. So this is why originally we thought we should focus on identifying these business processes, or if you want, you could also refer to them as operational processes, or these are terms interchangeable in my opinion. So this is the reason why we focused on business processes. Of course, as partially discussed earlier, these business processes could also be in a more low detail of granularity. But then we would have to focus on specific healthcare systems. So we would have to translate them to the Greek healthcare system, or to the French one, or to something specific, something more specific at least. So we had to decide on a balance we had to decide at a granularity level which would keep a level of balance. So this is why we kept them a little bit abstract. Now, regarding the use of tools on each of these processes, or the technical developments, or how these technical developments could be really exploited in terms of these business processes, the answer is a little bit complicated, I guess, and it has to do with the already available infrastructures. So it would be easy for me to say, for example, that NLP or reasoning or machine learning would be useful in cases where a patient is for business process one. Let's say, for example, a visit to a patient clinic. So we all know that a patient could go there, and a decision support system might help the clinician to prescribe a drug which would not cause an adverse drug reaction. Let's take this very simple use case. I mean, we could of course say that, but this heavily depends on the already available infrastructures, and then we would have to move to the lower level of granularity. So I think that these things would the answer would be the same that I gave a little bit earlier, that the answer to your question will inevitably come when you will have to translate this model into real world practice. So then indeed we would have to select in each case, in each user case scenario, in each use case, of which tools we would have to use, if it would be natural language processing or knowledge engineering or description logic reasoning, and we would also have to decide on the data sources, on the specific data sources. I think that your question could also be done not only for the computational approaches, but also for the data sources used.
That is exactly, Pantelis. Thank you very much for the answer. It covers me. That's exactly, though, my follow-up question on slide 75. If you like to present it, and my initiation of my question is rooted on the fact that, on a personal experience, discussing with a colleague here from the Institute of Molecular Biology around the question, well, which data do you need for a specific issue, a given hypothesis that we are discussing, establishing a solution? And his answer was, I want it all. So basically on slide 75, you end up by showing, it's the third, towards the end, it's the fourth from the end, the patient-centric benefit risk ratio, okay, which I totally agree with you that such a, visionary, and in an ideal situation, yes, if one would be able to integrate, to harmonize and integrate everything, yes. But my question from a more practical point of view, exactly following your previous answer, would be from your experience, from the study, from the review of the evidence, from your technical implementation, et cetera, which do you think are the most critical real-world data sources that would enable at least a non-optimal, implementation of knowledge-based and AI or learning-based solutions, smart solutions, intelligent systems to support efficiently active pharmacovigilance in the context of clinical care?
Well, I would have to say, you want me to name only one data source?
No. I said, what do you think? What in your view, what experiences have you found out there?
I would say, I would have to say the use of lifestyle data through, mobile devices or something like that, because it is data from mobile devices provide a huge amount of data, which are very much related with time also. So they are a stream of data which could provide an outline of the patient's lifestyle, in my opinion. I mean, Google knows when Google should silence my mobile. So, and they do it automatically, so that I wouldn't hear, I wouldn't get notifications. So this is very important information, and this could show lifestyle trends for me. So this is one data source I think it should be prioritized. The second data source that should, in my opinion, be prioritized is the so-called patient-reported outcomes, because they provide patient-reported outcomes are essentially answers provided by patients on well-defined questionnaires. So this is what patient-reported outcomes are mostly, okay? And of course, free input if the patient wants to provide it. I think that while patient-reported outcomes would not have this timely continuous flow of data as lifestyle data based on our mobile devices would, they would give us the personalized aspect, the personal insights, which are very important, in my opinion.
So you think that, if I understand again correctly from your answer, that secondary use of EHR data is not really a powerful source in the context of?
No. I think they are. I think that they are one of the sources that are gradually entering the real use. I mean, 2 days ago we watched an event by EMA where they discussed about this Darwin new initiative, where they would integrate healthcare databases from all over Europe to use them for pharmacovigilance purposes and so on. So I think that this is more or less a decision already taken. It has not yet been practical.
Okay, so you are referring to additional data sources on top of EHR?
observational
properly.
healthcare databases,
Right. Okay.
the
Okay.
health records are a marginal case here.
And I will also close my questions with the final one of the issues, or the only issue I basically criticize you in my report, is the fact that I believe you are not making justice to the work. I think your fourth objective, which states that you seek to provide pilot developments of technical artifacts supporting the vision of active pharmacovigilance, and you report, or you make reference to some publications to which I went and read and had a view on the work that it was reported there. And I think, and I don't understand the reason why that work was not actually part of your thesis as a pilot development, as an initial technical development to demonstrate some of the knowledge-based technologies and approaches that you've elaborated. And with that being my critique, I would like to openly and publicly hear your response to that question.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if it was clear from the presentation. This whole work was conducted also in the context of the PV Clinical project, which aims to develop a web application integrating the various data sources and bringing them to the clinical environment. So we decided that I didn't want to present the technical work conducted by the PV Clinical project. I didn't want to emphasize on at least only on that. So there is a team behind that with software engineers and so on. So we decided that it was just a decision which
okay, clear.
Not, of course.
I still hold my opinion, just like the previous speaker said. I still hold my opinion. I still believe it is important technical work that has a place, had a place in your thesis. I understand your opinion that you decided for whatever reason, possibly because I don't know, even Vasilis's contribution to the work, and you didn't want to. Which is fair and understandable. So with I've finished my discussion. I want to re-emphasize that I really enjoy the work. I think it's methodologically properly structured and executed, nicely presented, and I think it's a very, very valuable contribution to the wider domain, and all the best for things to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tsinakis. So then I would like to hold the mic to maybe, I don't know, Dr. Stamatopoulos, would you like to go on with your questions?
Yeah, but Thierry should probably come first, if you agree, Thierry.
Sorry?
If Thierry agrees,
yes.
I could come before Marie-Christine.
Okay.
And maybe you, Corinne, I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thierry is with me, so.
Oh, okay.
The only one in the big room of my lab. Yeah,
okay. You look really nice.
Thank you.
So if we are close, you wear our mask, but otherwise it's more than 1 meter, so it's okay.
Okay.
Corinne, I should have been at PTA if these things weren't happening, to see my very, very close friend at the hematology, Professor Frédéric Davy.
Okay.
So I'm very often there. Anyhow.
Okay. Too bad. Next time.
Hopefully.
Well, thank you, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for this great job and your great thesis. I have a few questions. I appreciate a lot the part of the state of the art. And what is surprising me is that you said there is no major success. And that's, I think it's quite severe. And what are the first steps to have success? What are the first steps to put all these methods, all these ontology, all this huge work and very interesting work in clinical practice? What are the first steps to do this? I know it's very quite complicated.
In my opinion, at least, the first step would be to focus on the processes and to decide what the goal, what the very specific goal of the system would be, and how it would be integrated in the clinical environment. In my opinion, at least, but I could also support it with something. But I didn't want to interrupt you. If you want to continue your question, I don't want to interrupt you.
No. I think because classical vendors or classical vendors like big vendors like Cerner, Alpha, or classical vendors are not implemented all these techniques. They are still in research. And I think we have all a lot of job to do to put it in daily practice. So I don't know in your thesis if you have interviewed some vendors or some vendors or some developers of these.
I have not interviewed, vendors or developers, but I could say from personal experience, I could say that there are also technical issues. Obviously interoperability is always an issue. It seems that a lot of people, HL7 Fire, for example, it seems to be a widely accepted solution now, but this was not the case until like 5 years ago or something like that. So obviously also technical things require some time, especially on interoperability aspects. I mean, even though now Fire, for example, is a widely accepted technical interoperability solution, still it is not implemented everywhere. So if you would imagine a vendor of drug safety systems, while he would obviously invest money or effort on building a Fire interface, still Fire interface should be properly specified for each localized setting. So it is these things need time and are not immediately solved. So another issue here, focusing on ontologies per se, I would have to say that also the tools provided for the very specific technical implementations like RDF and OWL are not as mature as somebody would expect. I mean, I can see that also in the software engineers working for the PV Clinical project. When we have a new software engineer, we keep on checking again if there are new libraries and so on, so that we would train him on that. But we see that there is no heavy investment from big software vendors like Microsoft or Oracle or big companies on focusing on RDF development tools, on OWL development tools. So this is also an issue because it makes things harder for software engineers to work with this data. But apart from the technical issues, I should also say that operational issues are also a key thing. I had this backup slide, which I removed it at the last minute just to save time. And in this backup slide, I intended to show to highlight two recent papers, which focus actually on the issues of integrating these intelligent technological paradigms in the healthcare as a whole, and also in drug safety in particular. The first paper has been published in August by a team in Stanford, and they propose actually the development of a new delivery. They call it a delivery science for artificial intelligence in healthcare. The authors argue that that design thinking approaches like the one that we applied should be engaged, and operational processes should be elaborated and emphasized. The second paper was published on October 2 months ago, and focuses on the challenges regarding the integration of such technical advances in drug safety per se. Both these papers in highlight, in my opinion, that the issues raised, are not really solved. So I think that this process of identifying business processes and further refining them and further localizing them and identifying user goals, which could be generalizable, and then specifying them also in the respective localized settings, could be useful also in this aspect. I hope I'm answering your question, but I'm not really sure though.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. I totally agree with you. I think we have a big issue with that, to put it in daily practice, and many developers and many software engineers do not know ontology and do not know all these techniques, and especially in healthcare, and that's a problem. Thank you very much, and thank you for this great thesis.
So Corinne, you need to put your unmute.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Should I go for a few questions now? Would you like to? And then the two of you will close the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pantelis, it was really a pleasure to read your work, and I really agree with other comments that have been made today. That I think you made really a beautiful work in editing and providing us with synthetic pictures and graphs to make clear what you think about the whole work you've performed. I've been impressed actually by the methods you used. I think it's very it's a step-by-step approach that is very interesting, and it gives, I think, credibility to your statements. Of course, it's not exactly my daily practice, so my questions are not going to be very technical, but maybe more from a clinician point of view. And I have a few. First, it's not exactly a question, maybe it's a comment, but when I first read your thesis, I was actually surprised that you would name active pharmacovigilance versus passive pharmacovigilance, where, in my view, what is active for us is when you need to think about declaring a side effect to our colleagues in the pharmacovigilance team. And I would expect that something that all build up with databases, in my view, is something like automated, and where we would not have so much work to do. And so to me, the passive pharmacovigilance would more be what you're talking about, whether I felt I was more involved into the active way of doing it. And the reason why it doesn't work very well is probably because we don't put enough input as clinicians in declaring the side effect for the patients. I was wondering whether, because I'm involved in drug toxicity and also in drug dosage, for example, as a nephrologist in the field of chronic kidney disease. And by the way, I thank you for showing an example about renal failure earlier. I was wondering, what do you think are the links between pharmacovigilance, drug toxicity, drug-drug interactions, and also drug dosage? I mean, is it, in your view, is it, because we are talking about using many kind of data coming from different databases, do you think in this perspective, we could reconcile the pharmacovigilance perspective and all the topics on appropriate prescription in the field of kidney disease or hepatic disease, for example, and also drug-drug interactions? Would this be a whole, a big problem that we could answer through such type of projects?
Well, in principle, yes. I mean, in principle, I could say yes, but it will have to be, you know, practical challenges always come up when you try to implement such systems, and especially when you bring them to real world practice. Regarding the specific data types that you referred to, I have to say that when we were trying to build this OpenPV, let me scroll through my backup slides. I have to say that when we were here, you can see only a snapshot of the model of the OpenPV signal model, but this kind of information, like dosage models, like dosage of drugs, and this kind of information are included in this model because not because I decided to. I'm an engineer, so I could not really judge the value of them. But I have seen that they are referred to the pharmacovigilance signal reports published by the World Health Organization, so by the Uppsala Monitoring Center, by the UMC. So one information published is published there. Obviously, it's very useful, and it's valuable, not only useful. So we indeed have modeled such information in the OpenPV signal knowledge graph, but I have not gone into the detail of describing all this model, all this ontological model. So yes, this information could be useful. They are, at least in principle, available in electronic health records, and they seem to also be used when evaluating pharmacovigilance signals by groups of experts. So the answer is yes, and indeed one of our technical developments was to conduct not only to show this data, but also to conduct reasoning upon them. Mm-hmm. So to interlink them and also be able to answer queries upon them. So using such models, the system could also ask questions like which were the dosage schemes for the specific patients when this adverse drug reaction occurred. Okay. Regarding the drug-to-drug interactions, I have to say that in spontaneous report systems, there is no actually there is the main suspect drug reported, and then the concomitant drugs are reported. Mm-hmm. So you have what the end user identifies as the main suspect drug, but you don't. I don't know if there is an option to report a potential drug-to-drug interaction from the patient side. I'm not really sure. You know, these things change also all the time, but I think that I'm pretty sure for the FDA information, I mean, it's stored as main suspect drug and then concomitant drugs. So this information implicitly exists, but it is not. I don't think it's recorded as such. So you are. I can say that drug-to-drug interactions are very heavily investigated in terms also of the mechanism of action. So They are also very much related with pathway information data sources, but I think it would be very hard to make a specific system for drug-to-drug interactions. I would treat them whole as adverse drug reactions as a whole.
Okay.
Drug-to-drug interactions would be only a subcase of the.
Okay.
Of the
Thank you. I was wondering. Of course, I'm very much interested into the importance that you give to the patient's reported outcomes. Do you think this would lead us to define different types of side effects, like side effects from the point of view of the physician and side effects from the point of view of the patient? What I mean is, in the end, the bottom line, when you have a side effect, is not the objective link between the drug and the symptoms. Most of the time, there's a decision that is made by the clinician together with the patient. And very often, it only relies on the belief, what the patient believes in. If the patient is convinced that the side effect is due to such or drug, maybe they're going to stop it. And maybe they're going to ask us to change the drug. And even though sometimes we're not convinced it's related. And even though we spend some time explaining the patients that there's maybe no link between this particular drug and the symptoms, it doesn't really change much, because in half of the cases, then the patient is going to ask us to give them a different treatment, or they're not going to take it. So do you think it's a different concept? Do you think we should have two different views on side effects? Do you think it's important to take into consideration the reality of the link between the drug and the side effect? Or do you think what's really new in your proposal here is to consider the side effect of a drug as something global between the prescription and the fact that the patient is going to take it or not? What is your view? I mean, how do you react to this question?
I would proceed with seeing these two aspects combined. I would not separate them. I would try to integrate them and try to provide a framework where we could better interpret the patient's feeling. But still, I think that what you obviously know that better than I do. You are a clinician, as you said. The patient would insist when an adverse drug reaction comes up, regardless of what the data might say. Okay, so what I say is that we could take this input into account. We could take patient input into account even when the results are not that crucial or are not that that heavy, for example, and we could use them also to better inform other patients. I mean, one of the key issues here is that the dissemination back to the community. So when somebody feels that psychologically, for example, he feels that he's worsening psychologically, this is also something we should consider as a potential adverse drug effect.
True, but I mean, especially in the field of the dissemination to the community, it could be seen as a drawback from such a system where the scientific link between the drug toxicity and the symptoms is not really necessary, because it could end up by mixing up things and promoting maybe false informations. Because sometimes patients are wrong. They are convinced that it's because of the drug, when it's totally different. So maybe it could be difficult for the scientific and medical community, or there's maybe a point of attention here to make clear, to be clear towards the medical community that on one hand, we want to take into account the experience of the patient and what they feel about the drug, but we also have the goal of being, scientifically correct with regard to the toxicity or the responsibility of the drug with regard to the symptoms. So I think it could be something quite difficult to accept for clinicians, that this feedback from the patient is not necessarily scientific, but still it's very important. So I think there's the work here. There's something to think about in terms of how can we handle that to make sure that the medical community will not have the impression that we are not working really scientifically. But I think it's very important to work to include the databases for patients-reported outcomes, even though we're not really ready to do it. At least in France now, it's not that used, but it's gonna change very fast. Yeah, Kostas, you want to add something?
Corinne, I hate to interrupt you,
no,
but
fine.
allow me just to comment on something. It came out 2 days ago in Cancer Cell, and it is a very interesting perspective about the new initiative, Open Notes in Oncology.
Mm.
So in the US, starting on November 2, it's no longer left to the physician or to the institution. It is obligatory to give access to physician notes to the patients, so the patients can have full access and express their view about their physical condition and their experiences with drugs. This will, of course, create an entirely new and complex environment. And we've tried that in Sweden some 6 or 7 years ago, when the patients were able to comment on the notes of the physicians in the health record. And this created so much concern. And the point in this editorial in Cancer Cell is how to convince us, the physicians, that it is not clearly a shift in the quote unquote power differential.
True. Thank you for your comments. There's still a long road ahead of us. I had a last comment or question. What was it about? You mentioned, Pantelis, a lot about social networks. I'm not sure you did mention anything about the GAFAM. Do you think they have a role to play in the real world data? Because it's not only about social networks, it's also about Google and
Google.
Yeah, could you comment on that? What is their role? Do you think it's helpful to turn towards this type of data or not?
Well, all the data, all these data sources and the emerging ones even more. They have their own biases. So I think that they should be analyzed each one in depth. Regarding the searches of the search engines, the Google searches, for example, I know that in the past they have given a lot of hopes to tackle epidemiological issues and to spot signals of epidemiological issues earlier. But I think that they also come up with a lot of biases and confounding factors. So personally, I would not bet on them. But this is a personal impression. I do not really, I cannot really back it up with data.
Okay, thank you. And my last questions, maybe it's only my curiosity, but do you feel that from your pharmacovigilance perspective, do you think it, what I mean is, do you think we should go above, sorry, above the countries to think about some kind of European, is it feasible to you to think about something international in terms of pharmacovigilance, or will it be too difficult to deal with the regulatory differences between countries, even the clinical protocols, even the maybe interoperability problems? I mean, my question is about internationally vision of pharmacovigilance.
Well, I think yes, because I think we should we should have an international approach, because essentially the drugs are the same, and
Yeah.
people are not truly the same, but still they are mixed up and moving all around all the time. So we have common problems. Ultimately.
Exactly. Mm.
So I think I would move if I was the policymaker, which obviously I'm not. I would think internationally. Practically, of course, this is not an easy thing to do, but I think that for example, in Europe, instead of starting building national networks to integrate healthcare databases, they start building in European networks. They didn't start from the national governments. They started from a European initiative. I think that for the specific purpose, it was a good idea. I would not expect from each local European government to. Okay, I come from Greece, where the healthcare system has many more crucial issues. But still, Greece wants and needs and will be aligned with European initiatives. Okay, I mean the Greek government would align with them. So I think that it would win. But for smaller countries, it would be influential to have a European paradigm, for example, and they would be aligned with that easier, I think, than initiating their own attempt to build such systems and such frameworks, technical and operational too. Because if Darwin, for example, is not only a technical or only an operational approach. It's both.
Okay. I mean, lastly, could you just give us a little clue of how you're going to use your work next? I mean, do you have any plans or projects to go further into this kind of reflection?
Actually, PV clinical projects, which I am the technical coordinator of, keeps on. It has not yet been completed. It will complete in 1 year from now, and this is a very important line of work for me and also for my team, for our lab, and we also I would very much like to pursue a funding opportunity to identify and to perhaps testing to try to define, to try to build a more specific index for this personalized pharmacovigilance. So but of course this is a matter of another project, if not more. Practically, the next steps are the building of this open PV signal knowledge graph I have already talked to you about, where we have with the help also of the team and in the PV clinical project, we are in the process of building a knowledge graph, and we are currently in the phase of the quality evaluation of all this data. And then we also we are also in the phase of building these systems, pharmacology, ontology, which needs to be validated, and these are the main paths of work regarding pharmacovigilance and drug safety as a whole.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, and congratulations for your beautiful work. It was really very, I learned a lot and it was very interesting. And I think it opens up nice opportunities to go further. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So.
Corinne?
Yes?
There is remarks from Antoine in the chat. So I don't know, Antoine, if you would like to... about this before we go on. I don't know, Corinne, if you have seen that.
No, I didn't.
I can make a quick comment. The first one is on the drug-drug interaction. So there are a possibility to appraise that and to code for that in the systems, but I'm not sure it's offered to the patients when they're reporting. So maybe it's only after that you can implement these things. So it was just a complement to the answer that Pantelis meant regarding the FIRES database. And the other is because you were questioning about the GAFA. And just to say that as part of the Odyssey project that you mentioned, at least Amazon Health is a partner of it. So of course they're betting a lot of that. And when you were saying that you might not bet on the GAFA on the future on that, I was just saying that not betting on the RASCA on the GAFA on whatever subjects was quite an easy bet at the moment. But that's all.
Okay, thank you, Antoine.
Okay, thank you, Antoine. Thanks a lot. Right. So who's going now? Kostas, would you like to comment?
Yes, of course. I apologize for my voice, but I'm on high-dose dexamethasone, and I'm experiencing adverse events, by the way. And this is one of them. Palpitations is another. So I will try to compensate by speaking louder.
Right.
So first of all, congratulations for a truly very well prepared and presented piece of work. Also, a very big thanks to Marie-Christine. It wouldn't have happened without your support, Marie-Christine, and I can't thank you enough for that. Pantelis, you are an amazing member of our team, and I'm obviously biased, but I can't resist in telling you that after today's discussion, I think that you choose a wrong title. It's not redefining active pharmacovigilance, but in the end, envisioning patient-centric pharmacovigilance. And building upon that, if you agree on this idea, then I think that your work opens up many avenues of research. If we want to rely on patient-derived data, PROs, for improving pharmacovigilance, then we will definitely need to work more to engage patients. So in other words, moving ahead means patient empowerment actions. What, in a nutshell, do you think should be done in that respect? And in the end, should they go hand in hand? And to make it even more complicated, what of all of that is communicated to the industry, and at which point, and by whom?
Okay. Okay. I don't know if I could support my answer with evidence or with data, but I will give my opinion, which is, I truly agree with the patient empowerment aspect, because I think that we all know here how adverse drug events are underreported actually. So patients do not really report adverse drug events. Even Kostas, I think he did not report his adverse events. Patient empowerment and giving benefits to patients, and also transparency, they should know about it. I really doubt if patients know how to report an ADR, or even if they know they could. So patient empowerment indeed goes hand by hand with this personalized, with this envision of personalized patient-centric pharmacovigilance. These would inevitably involve also technical tools, and knowledge engineering could be extremely useful in that. I have shown in this slide knowledge extraction, knowledge integration, and knowledge elicitation, but these are only part of it. Intelligent technical tools should be engaged in that aspect, and I also think we should focus on end user, on usability, and even investigate for unobtrusive methods to get data using IoT technologies and so on. But these are maybe they sound too futuristic. But since we talk about vision,
yes, Pantelis, okay, you say they sound futuristic, but you also mentioned something more tangible, like wearable devices. But again, this brings us to another big conundrum. It's this big dilemma. You are really relying on a corpus of data that in essence relates to what Donna Dickinson calls me medicine. And then the challenge is, how do you convince the individual citizen / patient that this corpus of data can be transformed into we medicine? So there is a lot of work to be done in order to convey to the patient that the data that they own, the data that derives from them directly, from measurements or from any other thing. You mentioned IoT and you said it's futuristic, devices are not. So yes. How does this information can be merged, combined, integrated, and then be fed in the appropriate algorithms and lead to new knowledge? Also, when it pertains to drug safety, do we have the answers?
It's a little bit early. I would say in principle we do, but practically to get it into real world operation, no, we need time. We need time not only for technical developments, but also for operational developments, for procedural developments. I mean, you mentioned this initiative with Open Notes. I think it was the name.
Yes.
Technically, it is something that could be done yesterday. I mean, the technology is there, but still procedurally, how you would communicate this kind of information without causing bigger problems is not yet solved, in my opinion. So it is something that we have to see. And this is a very interesting initiative. The same thing applies also for pharmacovigilance related data. I mean, how we will need to see how actually these data are going to be shared, who will have access on them, for what purposes, how the patient would consent on that, what the patient's consent would mean. I mean, nobody could give consent to could give true consent on something that he or she does not really understand. So how we would explain knowledge engineering or machine learning or whatever to a typical patient, and then I actually argue that we have his or her consent to use his or her data to conduct machine learning. So
which brings me, you made a beautiful segue to my penultimate question, which is how to convey, you said. And in the end, it can't be physicians or healthcare professionals only. It must be patient advocacy groups as well. So when you listed potential stakeholders, I didn't see those groups. And I think they are very relevant for what you, Marie-Christine, Thierry, Antoine are trying to do.
Indeed.
So I think that we need to collaborate very closely with them. Perhaps I'm very influenced by my two-day meetings with the European Hematology Association, European Union Affairs Committee, where we met with patient advocacy groups. And for them, these things, conveying knowledge, identifying the priorities and conveying knowledge is very important.
I fully agree. Defending my slide, actually, I would have to say that the stakeholders depicted in the slide would correspond to the business processes analyzed there. I cannot really find the slide right now, but I think that was the case. But ultimately, I totally agree with you that patients should be the center of this whole process, actually, not just a stakeholder. They should be the center. Okay,
final question. So you say the techniques are there, and I'm sure that Manolis, Marie-Christine would agree with you. And also suppose that big data becomes available, and we've heard from all of us ideas about where this data might come from and in the end constitute a big corpus. It may be a question of ignorance, but do we have also big interpretation in your field today?
No, in my opinion, big interpretation is not going to be conducted via technical means. It's going to be supported by technical means, but the terms reasoning and machine learning do not really. We are not there yet, at least yet.
So in the end, do you think that, or rather, what do you think would be the secret to get the answers to what constitutes value in your particular fields, which would drive big interpretation?
I don't know if there is a single answer to that. I would insist on integrating these technologies to the real world practice. This would be a reachable goal for the near future, in my opinion, to develop such approaches, and it could bring a lot of value with currently already existing because currently we have technologies which are not exploited for drug safety, and they could produce value with relatively little effort. You know, we wouldn't have to discover a magic algorithm which could reason everything, because still we have not integrated the already working algorithms. We have not yet integrated them or we have not yet brought them near clinical practice.
Thank you very much, Pantelis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Christine.
Thank you, Madame la Présidente, to give me the floor. So I will be quick because obviously I don't have a question for Pantelis, but I would like to say that in the lab we have been working on pharmacovigilance for a while now, and we are developing knowledge engineering approaches, ontologies. We are working with networks with natural language processing, and we publish and we make, I think, most of the time, some good proof of concept and so on. And still, stepping in the real world is very far. And so I really, take this very great opportunity to work with Pantelis and Vasilis, who are also computer scientists like me, to step back and try really to understand what is so difficult to go into the real world. And also because when we do our artifact, when we do our system, we should not think that these systems are done in the real world for people who decide. There are other people around, the patient, and new information, a lot of information, personal information. And we are also armed with our technologies to handle this. But it's not possible if we do things as we usually do in silos, So for me, this work is really a great opportunity to step back and not to present, although Pantelis has developed many things, not to present a new system, but really to understand for what, for who, where, and with what we can really have an impact and change practices. Okay, so then I think it is really a framework, and at least for me, it is a very important framework to just, the methodology of a new project in pharmacovigilance will have to go through the filter of this framework. What are the user goals, the business process? Maybe I will not have to build new technology, although there are new technologies that are very nice. But maybe for what I want to do, I don't need that, although I need knowledge engineering and so on. So this was a great opportunity, and it was of course, the result is very useful for this field of pharmacovigilance, as we are trying to contribute as with some new information technologies. Okay, so but it's difficult to end with something which is very useful by hand. You have to work on your own field to use this framework and to adapt and to spend time and money to develop very useful things always. So I would like to say that it was really possible because of the spirit of Pantelis, the fact that he is really a matter person and a matter researcher already, so very autonomous, and also with a very great, I would say that he can listen a lot. And we had, hopefully I was able to meet Pantelis several times in person. So that was nice, the most in conferences actually. One time in Paris, I think, but most in conferences. So we could exchange, and we also had our regular meetings every 2 weeks. So I could really appreciate this autonomy in terms of research and how we could get to this result. It was really a pleasure, and I hope we are going to continue working together because I really would like to take a problem, maybe with Corinne. I don't know. It was what we intended to do 1 year ago. So we spoke about that, and then to look how to place this problem in the framework and to start with something that could step into the real world. So thank you very much, Pantelis. I know that your future is is good, is okay, thanks to Costas. I would like to thank also Costas for his support and to not letting me alone in this big story, and to knowing he was aside was very important for me as well. So thank you, both of you.
Thank
And
you
I
very much.
must say a final word, if I'm allowed, Marie-Christine. I'm not at all good at speaking about loss, but none of this would have been possible without Vasilis. So all of this work is dedicated by us to his memory.
Thank you. So now what we are going to do, Corinne, is maybe to ask Pantelis to disconnect and go to the waiting room, whatever. I don't know exactly how you can do that, Pantelis. Otherwise, you just finish, you just end the Zoom for you and you will come back. I will send you a mail. Or you come back and I will...
Marie-Christine, I will Skype Pantelis to tell him when to connect again.
Yes, but when if he connects again, he's in the waiting room.
Yeah, he will be in the waiting room.
So if I see him in the waiting room, I can have him enter whenever I want. So okay, he disappeared.
I have not disappeared yet. I just stopped sharing my screen.
Here is back again.
I will leave now, and then
yes, to end the diffusion